Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. Y'all, I'm so excited to have our beautiful, wonderful guest, Vanessa Weilnhammer, with us today. I've gotten to know Vanessa through her journey on Support Now, and she's done just an excellent job using our updates feature to share more about her daughter, Camila, and the journey that she's on. And through reading her updates, was compelled to reach out to see, hey, let's come on the podcast, and why don't you tell more of your story from a mom's perspective, because she is juggling quite a bit. And if you haven't been fortunate enough to see Camila on her registry, she's just this beautiful little girl that's so easy to root for, even from afar, even as someone that's never met her. And her mom, Vanessa, here is just as easy to root for. So, Vanessa, first of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Vanessa, you've been through it, the ups and the downs of medical mothering. I know it's not easy, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more about kind of how this journey even got started. I know it got started pretty early in her life, but if you can share just a little bit more details about Camila, what's going on with her, and then we'll transition more into your side of that story as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my daughter is Camila. She's my one and only. We're one and done. She is, like you said, the sweetest, happiest little girl. She really does light up a room whenever you're around her, which I think is so special.
She is so adorable. Like, her picture, like, she is so cute, and, so sorry to cut you off, but I just need to interject one last
That's
time.
so sweet. Yeah, she's the best. I love her. So yeah, so I think my journey into like this entire medical landscape was not at all something that I expected. I had a very normal pregnancy, and although she was born like via emergency C-section, she recovered really well in those early days. So I really wasn't concerned for her health or her well-being. It wasn't until she started physical therapy when she was about 4 months old for torticollis. She had, like, really bad reflux as a kid. That's when we started noticing things kind of looked just different. She had this interesting fluctuating muscle tone in which sometimes they kinda call it, like, the floppy baby syndrome, where the tone is just so, so low, but then all of a sudden, within the same day or the next day, her tone would be very, very high. And it did
Huh.
not make sense. And to this day, it still doesn't quite make sense, which I can talk about more. But that was a red flag for her physical therapist. I didn't know what should look like for a baby. I'm a first time mom. I don't know these things. So I was grateful for the PT to kind of raise the flag. But ultimately, what happened was that we were thrown into this world of specialists and testing and trying to understand what was going on. Since then, so since infancy, it's been long and an ongoing process. Camila is neurodivergent and she has a very complex medical presentation, not just with her tone, but she has significant speech and gross motor and fine motor delays. She's GT dependent. She has significant feeding and GI challenges. She continues to struggle with failure to thrive. I mean, I can go on. There's just so many complexities to her. We still don't know yet what the cause is. We don't have this unifying rare diagnosis, although her team thinks that there is this underlying genetic component and cause. We still don't know what that is. So, a big part of my journey has been learning how to be her mother and caregiver without having all the answers while navigating a really complex medical landscape all along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important thing to highlight. It's hard enough to be a parent and a caregiver in general, and then you add in medical complexities, and then you add in that you don't actually know what you're truly solving for. It's like you're trying to solve for symptoms and for to give her the best health possible, the best outcomes possible, without fully knowing kind of the root cause of it all, which has to be really perplexing and exhausting, to be blunt, because you're doing all the things you can do, but you're really not sure if you're addressing the heart of it.
Right. That's exactly right. I think, we just came home from a long hospital stay. So about 8 weeks we were in the hospital, which was much longer than we thought. We thought we were going in for fluids, just for hydration, which turned into this. And I think that is just like, when I
Yeah.
say that out loud, I'm like, this is medical parenting. This is what it's like to have an undiagnosed kiddo. You go in and they're like, "You can't leave. This Your child is very sick, and we don't know what's causing it. We don't know what's driving it. We've never seen this symptom present this way. We've never seen it present that way." And the same questions come up. Have you done genetic testing? Have you done these things? And of course, the answer is always yes.
Right. She's like, "Of course,
And
I've done
there's
everything. What do you think? Or you think we're just
like,
not
I
gonna."
know, we
Yeah.
the kitchen sickness, we get it, and they have nothing else to add, which
Yeah.
just adds more frustration to the experience, right? Like, it's kind of like we we're grateful to not be in the hospital, we're home and there's gratitude that comes from that. But also my nervous system is still trying to adapt to being home. Like, it adapted to being in a place we're no longer at. We were in the hospital. We were in like this true medical environment. Everything was shaped by medication, testing, tracking your symptoms, having unanswered questions and clarity. And we're not there anymore. And she's still not healthy, but we're just in a different environment. At least that's how it feels for me. My nervous system is still the same as it was in the hospital. I'm just now at home.
And it's so fascinating to me I wanna go back to, like, when she was in utero, like, there was no red flags throughout your pregnancy that led you to believe that you would be in this position at all?
No, nothing. Everything
Wow.
was truly normal and everything looked healthy. She looked healthy. She was growing as expected.
Wow. And so for you, Vanessa, we often talk on this podcast about grief. How do you explain the different range of emotions you've felt over the last almost 3 years that she's been Earthside?
I kind of think about grief a little bit different than how I've heard it talked about, at least from like, because I love podcasts. So hearing other moms in similar situations, I think for me early on, something that actually helped a lot with the processing of the circumstances was viewing Camila's medical complexities as truly neutral rather than something positive or negative. It's not something I see as good or bad. It's just part of her, and I love her. So I don't feel grief around who she is or what her body is capable of, but there is still something that sits alongside my life that feels really heavy, and I think that that grief is more about the weight of what this life requires of me.
Mm,
Constant vigilance, the lack of ease, the fact that there's always something to manage or to think about. There is no off switch. Even things that are supposed to be simple or fun, they aren't simple. There's so much planning and thought that has to go into everything. It's like
yeah.
the restlessness of this experience. I think that's what I grieve. And I think the other part that I realized at the same time, there's this joy. And I think there's been this complex piece that I've kind of learned to kind of welcome is that I can experience such incredible joy and happiness with Camila. And right next to it is grief.
Yes.
It's rare that I feel one without the other. They're always right next to each other. And that's really difficult.
Yeah. It's heavy. It's heavy. Yeah, it's like I'm sure sometimes you're just like looking for some lightness. Like, can it just I just want to breathe more freely without having to constantly measure my reality against all of the difficulties of managing the day to day. Again, as simple as like, let's go eat or you need to go to the bathroom, right? Where you're still constantly in it. I have an interesting question. I wasn't actually expecting to ask you, but I'm just curious. Was or is Camila's medical complexities a part of the reason why you're one and done, or was that always a part of the plan?
Oh, so before I actually never thought I'd be a mom. It wasn't like a desire that I had throughout my life. I mean, obviously not as a child. It's not something I thought about growing up, becoming an adult. I was
Okay.
very career driven. My degrees are in the mental health field. That's kind of where my heart was. Obviously, things change, and I met the love of my life. I got married, and I realized, oh, you know what? I think I do want to have a child. And I always thought I'd have one, but it was open to more. And after having Camila, I think it did kind of solidify. I feel like if I'm going to continue to be the best mom for Camila, the best caregiver, I'm acutely aware of my capacity. And if I'm going to be functioning at this level for an unknown period of time, I can't take on the responsibility of another child, regardless if that child is similar to Camila or dissimilar. I
Right.
just, I don't have it. I don't have the
Yeah.
bandwidth.
I appreciate you being honest and being willing to answer that question because I do think that's a lot of medical moms whose first child have complexities and disabilities. It's a very challenging decision of, do we have another and do we provide a sibling? And there's no right answer. And I think it's important to provide a perspective of someone that said, you know, I know my capacity. I know what I'm able to give. And to have the confidence to say that is, I think, very, very important to say out loud. So I appreciate you being willing to answer that. It's so striking to me. I did not expect you to say that you weren't sure that you wanted to be a mom because you seem to fill the role so naturally, so organically. But I do want to also focus in this conversation around you. You are still, as you mentioned, you're still so in it. And it's messy and every day, I mean, we had a previously scheduled podcast, right? And we had to cancel because she got sick. Describe to me, like, for you, what are some things that you do for yourself to help maintain your own sanity, your own sense of optimism that allows you to press forward day to day? Because as an outsider, obviously, it's easy to say, oh, they're out of the hospital. They must be good. Oh, she's home now. They're in a good place. And as you have explained to me, day to day, that's the stuff that people don't see. So, how do you keep yourself sound?
I mean, honestly, I know the term always comes up of you have to take care of yourself to take care of someone else. And I don't feel like I am taking care of myself. And that's the honest truth. I think that it's something that I struggle with a lot. There's a lot of frustration and even resentment around that for me because I don't want self care to be like, I got to take a shower and I had 5 minutes to myself. That doesn't feel like care. That feels like survival. And that's where I've been since she's been born. I want something that actually pulls me out of this role, something that feels like it's just mine. And right now, I don't have access to that. And I think there's probably a lot of other moms who feel that exact same way right now, especially when their kids' needs are this constant and this intense. So, really, filling my cup up right now isn't me directly caring for myself. The only thing that keeps me going is knowing that I'm doing everything I can for Camila. And right now that matters. It doesn't replace that I need space for me to be a person outside of that. It's just where I am right now.
Yeah, and again, you're just being honest that you know that you might be pouring from an empty cup, but that it's very really hard to fill up at this point, both mentally and it sounds like even just from a time perspective, it's like when do you do that? When do you escape? When do you feel comfortable leaving the house, leaving her?
Mhm.
Because you do have to attend to her pretty significantly. How would you describe, the relationship with your husband and how you two manage things? How have you guys come together? How have you all lifted each other up? Because if it's hard for you to get out and to do certain things, which makes sense, what kind of systems or routines do you have to put in place with your husband that have helped you guys work better together?
Gosh, I mean, I'm so passionate about this topic because I feel like this experience affects multiple areas of your life, but I feel like it really impacts marriage. You kind of go from like this, at least for us, we went from this really wonderful, beautiful partnership who really enjoying each other's company, and we had hobbies together and we would go on trips, and we enjoyed sharing life together. And then this big thing happens. And I think that we've done a good job of being able to communicate the logistics around Camila's care. Who's doing what? How do we do that? What needs to be done? What does she need? What's the plan for today? What's the plan for the next hour? How are we tackling it? And I think there's been a cost to that because by the end of the day, there's often not a lot left to give to each other.
Mm.
And I feel like we've shifted from being partners to being like coordinators or managers of her care. I think there are moments where it feels like we're just trying to keep everything moving rather than actually feeling connected.
Mm,
At the same time, my husband is truly the only person in my life who fully understands this life. So
yeah,
there's this constant tension of feeling really connected in one way and really stretched thin in another. And I feel like that's difficult. It's certainly this how it's impacted marriage is different than I would have expected
yeah,
it to be.
yeah, yeah. And that's so hard because what you're describing, it's so easy to see where you used to enjoy life and all that life meant, and now it is survival. It's how does he help you so that you can breathe a little bit, you can shower, you can get some dinner,
Mm.
and then vice versa. How can you free him up to work or whatever he has to do? But there's not what you're saying is like there's just not a lot of room for the extra stuff. I mean, I would imagine traveling is challenging or doesn't happen. Like how have you been able, because again, she was born in mid-May, correct?
Yeah.
So she's almost 3 years old. Have
Mhm.
you been able to leave, like, in what capacity can you get out? Like, explain that to me a bit better.
Yeah, so no, we have not traveled. Part of that is like, okay, there's multiple pieces to that. I mean, she requires complex care. Like, how do we logistically
Yeah, how do you
plan to
do it? Right,
travel?
right.
She's a wheelchair user, and there are just so many complexities to that. Being neurodivergent, like, I can't control another environment. I can control this one, though. So, like, part of it is like, we're not at a stage in her life that can cater towards traveling. Part of it is financial. Like, we have this wonderful Support Now page that has offered us the ability to fundraise to get her equipment and things that she needs to thrive. There's certainly not room to pay to travel or to do things leisurely. So, the extent to which we do things is kind of doing things in our community, being able to explore our neighborhood. I mean, she's certainly a popular kiddo on the block. I mean, she has special wheels, so all the little kids love to greet her and spend time with her. So that's been meaningful to have a wonderful community here. But truly, a lot of what we do is kind of centered around her interests right now and trying to figure out what options we have for her so that we all can kind of feel like we're doing something for us.
What are some of those interests?
So Camila's big into the outdoors. So a lot of our local park districts have like adaptive equipment now, which is really neat.
Awesome.
So we could take her for hikes in this adaptive equipment, and she loves going to the library. So we do story time and she gets to be around other kiddos her age. Things like that is kind of how we center like our time outside the house. I mean, outside of going to like therapy appointments and medical appointments, which is the larger chunk of what we do outside the house. But that's kind of the extent. We don't go beyond just 30 minutes of our neighborhood.
And Vanessa, you're so open on in this conversation around the challenges, both, finding time for yourself, challenges of what that represents for marriage. How honest and open do you feel like you've been with your own social circle, close family and friends about this experience? Do you find yourself, sharing and opening up? Do you find yourself more shut down? How have you navigated just overall communication with the people that love you the most that have an interest in seeing you thrive?
Yeah, so that's been tricky because, this is my job, right? And this job is consuming it right now. It's truly 24/7. It's difficult to even, like, have the capacity to think about the people who I love, the people who support me. It's difficult to find the emotional capacity to share how I'm feeling, to share to the extent that others can understand. I think all that kinda contributes to this feeling of loneliness and isolation even though we have support. I have family that are close, and yeah, I still feel lonely and I still feel isolated.
Hmm. So, for people that know and love you, that don't want you to feel lonely, that don't want you to feel alone, they probably also recognize that, again, you're pouring from an empty cup. You're exhausted. It's hard to open up to everyone about how you're feeling on, a day to day basis. What advice, or rather, what suggestions do you have for those people that want to connect with you but aren't sure how? Like, have you thought about how best to kind of get that connection without kind of exerting as much energy so that there's not so much on you.
So one thing that I think about, which I've used to try to explain this experience, is kind of like being on an island. It's not like a peaceful one, like a tranquil one where you're excited to vacation at. It's somewhere you just kind of end up without choosing it. And me, Camila, and my husband live there, and I can see the mainland from the island, and that's where my other family lives, my friends live, and other like quote unquote typical families live. There's infrastructure, there's predictability. It's where I thought where motherhood would be and what it would look like. And over here on the island, we're by ourselves and it's constant and there's no real pause and everything depends on how she's doing. And I think about it and I've explained it this way that my support kind of feels like the waves crashing onto the shoreline. Those are the people meeting me there or trying to meet me there. They come in, they check on me, they offer support. And I do feel that, but most of the time I'm not standing at the shoreline. I'm inland and I'm just trying to manage what's in front of me. Sometimes I have the ability to be at the shoreline and meet the waves and dip my toes in it. And I think any of my close family can say that I think we mutually benefit from those conversations. Sometimes it's filled with humor, sometimes it's filled with just the rawness of how I'm feeling. But the important thing is the waves keep meeting the shoreline. I think if the waves stopped meeting the shoreline, I don't really, I think it would further those feelings of isolation for me. I think it would put me in a place of like probably deep depression and sadness and hopelessness. But the waves keep coming. And I think that's the piece that needs to keep happening. I may not always be able to be at the shoreline, but I know the waves are coming and I know that that steady stream of support is there. And that helps me. It doesn't take away responsibility, but it helps you feel less alone.
Beautiful analogy. And I think it's also just a good reminder that even if you might not be at the shoreline, even if you might not be able to dip your toes in the water, you still feel it, you still hear it, you still see it.
Mhm.
So keep coming because even if you don't have the capacity to meet them in that moment, it's not as if you want those waves to go away.
Mm,
And I think that's a really important thing for community members, supporters, across the board, not just yours, just anyone, is that just because someone's not meeting you where you are, doesn't mean that they don't want to know that you're thinking about them, that you're
mhm,
trying. And it's also a good reminder that not every time they see you are you going to be in a certain place to give them what they thought they may get out of the interaction because the fluidity of your situation is such that you don't know what state you're gonna be in,
mhm,
but to keep coming. I think that's a really beautiful analogy that you just shared, particularly as you think about, like, the island versus, like, the mainland where there's structure and systems, and something I've heard you say, and I've heard other moms in a similar situation say, is that part of the hardest part of having a medically complex child is that the rest of the world keeps moving,
mhm,
and for moms that are taking care of their children with these complexities, it's sometimes you can look up and be like, "Hello, like, do you see me? Like, I'm over here doing everything I can, and you're just kind of running your usual, 7 to 7 schedule." And that can create a lot of contempt and just a lot of challenges with maintaining relationships because you're just living in two different settings. But
mhm,
what I appreciate so much about what you're saying is that that's a part of it. Like what you're sharing with me is that that's just a part of your journey and you've accepted that, but accepting it doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means that you've learned how to like talk to yourself about this.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I don't wanna, like, put it out there that, like, I have this incredible, like, support system and I'm wrapped around in care. I think that that would be misleading. Like, if I'm being really honest, support has been complicated. There have been people in our lives that we thought we were really, really close with
Yeah.
who just disappeared when things
Ugh.
got really complex, and I feel like that's something that happens. We hear that happening with families who go through a tough time, and the people you thought you can lean on are gone, and then at the same time, we've had people who we don't never had a close relationship with, and all of a sudden, they're making up parts of our village, and they're steadfast in a very meaningful way.
So interesting. It's
Yeah,
so interesting who fades because the fear or they're just so uncomfortable with whatever the
yeah,
situation is that they can't handle it or they're thinking about it too much from their own perspective. Like, I don't know
yeah,
how I would handle this, so I don't want to think about it at all.
right. I don't know exactly what the right words are to say. I don't
Right.
know what Vanessa and Camila and Frankie, my husband, will need. I don't wanna intrude, I don't wanna impede, they're going through so much, and all of a sudden, all that is just us being acutely aware that you're not here for us.
Mm,
And that's all that it
painful.
is.
It's painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we begin to wrap up, Vanessa, I would love for you to think about, what is that primary piece of advice or what is that thing that you would tell another mom that's in your situation, that's in that middle. Again, they're not at the very, very beginning, right? But they haven't crossed that kind of bridge where you have at least clarity to then begin to like create your own routine and world and systems around what you know to be true. What do you say to that mom?
I mean, it's tricky because I'm in it, so it's hard to come up with this beautiful, like, piece together advice. I think what I can say is that it sucks to be here, and it's okay that you're here. This is really challenging, and you're doing such an incredible job managing all of it. I hope that we all can get to the after, to the state of active reflection, and this part is over, and we can have all this incredible wisdom that we often hear from other moms in a different stage of life. And this is where we are, and I hope that you feel held by this honesty. I hope that you know that I may be on the other side of the same island with you, and I'm with you, and I hope the waves continue to greet you.
Beautiful. Vanessa, I could talk to you all day. I really could. I'm so grateful for again just your honesty and what you just said is also just super important. So often I think moms are challenged by feeling like they have to project a certain strength, that they have to project a certain image that even if I have a medical complex child, but God gave me this for a reason, and therefore I'm convinced. And some moms might have that perspective, and that's wonderful. And there's something very refreshing about just being able to label it for what it is. It's a sucky situation that no one would admit that they signed up for. People don't go into parenting saying, "Give me the hardest thing possible." They just
Right.
don't.
Mhm.
And so I'm very confident that that message will resonate with so many people that just wanna be told, like, "This is hard. This is really hard." And there's purpose in all of it, regardless of how challenging it might be. You just have to keep pressing forward.
Yep.
With your permission, we'd love to share the registry because I am so confident that if more people saw your precious family, there would absolutely be even more support. I know personally, I'm praying for your family just to get clarity. Just more clarity so that you can move with more intention. And while, certainly there are ups and downs, I'm really optimistic that somewhere soon you'll get more answers that just allow a little bit more freedom of mind
Mhm.
even if it doesn't necessarily reflect in, like, the day-to-day routines that you maintain, and I just wanna say thank you for, again, being here, and we will continue to do everything we can do to support your wonderful family.
Thank you.